Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at the highly useful session object. So let's create a new JSP here, and let's call it session.jsp. Yeah, I think that's a good name. And if you put a scriptlet tag or an expression tag in your JSP, you'll notice that there is a object in there called session. So if I just press Control Space here in Eclipse, I can see here all the methods and the objects that I can call, and among them is this session object. And the session object is really useful because it allows you to transfer data between JSPs and servlets seamlessly, and in such a way that it tracks your session. As long as the session is active, this same session object will be available. So let's take an example of this. And in fact, to start with, we can just look at, if I type a dot, and this autocomplete comes up, and there's some useful, you can see all the different methods that you can use here. And one of them is, we've got a get and also a set max inactive interval, and if the user is inactive for longer than the number of seconds specified by this max inactive interval, then the session will time out and it will lose all its data. So it's really useful to know that. And in fact, if I just run this just to show you, so let's say always use this server. So I created a new dynamic web project just for this tutorial, and I'll click finish, and let's see if this works. So here we go. So we see that by default for Tomcat here it's set for 1800 seconds, which is 30 minutes. And if the user doesn't click anything for more than 30 minutes, then the session will time out and it will disappear. So next time we reference it, it will be a new empty session. But the great thing about sessions is, as I say, you can use them seamlessly between servlets and JSPs. So let's create a servlet here, and I'll create a new servlet. So I'll go to new other servlet, and let's just call this session. In fact, that'll do, and I'll put this in a package called demo, let's say. Click finish. And now in session, so by default if I go directly to the servlet, it'll invoke the doGet method, and I could say here request.getSession, and getSession returns this HTTP session object. So I can say here HTTP session. I'm just using Control Space to autocomplete this. That's not the one I want actually. Session. There we go. Session equals request.getSession. Now let's suppose that I have some kind of object. It could be a bean, or it could be any kind of object really, and preferably with some get and set methods. And let's just create such an object here. So I'll right click and go to new class, and let's call this, for example, it could be called shopping cart or whatever you like. In fact, let's call it cart, just for a change from stuff I've been using before. And let's put that in a demo package as well, demo, and I'll call this, so I'll call it cart, and I'll click finish, and I'll give cart some properties. Let's say maybe, I don't know, private string, or let's say, yeah, private int total items, let's say. This is just a completely random arbitrary example, and let's initialize that to 0, and I'll give that get and set method. So I'll right click and go to source, generate getters and setters, and I'll generate getters and setters for that. So we've got get total item, set total item. Actually I wanted to call it items, let's put an S on the end, and there we go, S is all the way through. So this is this could be a shopping cart, a fully fledged shopping cart that maintains a list of items that a user adds to it, and we could have a method for getting and setting the total number of items in the cart. And now if I go to session.java here, here I could say, for example, session. Well, let's create a cart first. I could say cart equals new cart, and I could say cart dot set total items and set it to 7, let's say. And then I could add that object to the session, so I can say session dot set attribute, and I'll call this attribute cart, and I'll set in there the cart object like this. And now let's forward to my session.jsp. In fact, let's forward to, just to make it a bit more interesting, let's forward to a cart.jsp. So create a JSP called cart.jsp, or show cart maybe .jsp. Click finish, and let's say items in cart, and here I'll have a scriptlet. In fact, let's go up here, and well, I probably could do this in one line. I could have an expression tag, and I can say session dot get attribute cart. Now that's going to return an object, so if I want to use it I have to cast it to the actual specific type of object. So I need to downcast here, and I know it's going to be a cart, and I'm going to have to import my cart as well. So let's have a tag up here. Let's have a import directive. So I need to say page, well, a page directive with an import attribute, and I need to say import equals demo.star. And now I can use my cart later on, and I could, in fact, maybe it's cleaner if I just create a separate variable up here in a scriptlet tag saying cart equals and session.get attribute cart, and I need to cast it to a cart. So I've got my cart out of the session, and now finally here I can say cart.get total items in a expression tag if I want. And now as the final step here, let's go to cart.java. Let's go to save that. Let's go to session.java, and imagine this is my controller servlet, and this is going to be some kind of it's going to probably get an action parameter and then forward to the cart if the user clicks the show cart link. But I'll miss that stuff out here because we've already seen that, and I'll just demo this one aspect of this thing. And let's here say get servlet context, or I could say request.get request dispatcher, but I'll use get servlet context.get request dispatcher, and let's dispatch to show cart.jsp. So I'm just going to forward to that. So I'm going to say forward request and response. So the upshot is that my session servlet here, which is kind of like a controller, creates a cart. It sets that cart into the session. It forwards to a showcart.jsp, and showcart.jsp imports the appropriate package for the cart, gets the cart from the session, casting it to the right kind of object, and then uses the methods, in this case one method of that cart object, to display some data that was actually set back up in the session.java, which is my controller servlet. So let's just run that, and if I run that now, and yes, I want to update the context root just to be on the safe side, and let's see. So now we can see that we've got items in cart, and of course if I go to another page now, then that cart will still be available, so I can go to pages wherever I like, and I can go to different servlets if I want to, or different I could have like different actions being triggered in this do get here, and a cart will always be available. And of course I could do get session here, and if the cart's not, if it doesn't exist, then the cart is just going to be null. So I could say, for example, here, session.get attribute cart, and I could say cart equals session.get attribute cart, and I need a downcast there, so I'll say downcast to cart, and I could say here, if cart equals null, then we haven't already got a cart, and in that case I could set it to a new cart. But of course now it will be set, because I've already set it into this session. Let's just run that, and if I start, because this whole thing's cookie based, if I start a different browser, like Google Chrome, just paste that in, then you can see now it still says items in cart 7, and that's because if I go to a fresh browser or I clear my cookies or something, it's going to say, okay, well here this is going to be null, so it's going to create a new cart. So that's the very, very useful session object. And a little bit of a complication with this is that if your user switches cookies off, then as this stands, well, this is actually going to work, but if they click a link, then you might have a headache. So that's why in the next tutorial we're going to look at what you do if the user has disabled cookies in a browser, and how you can maintain session then. So join me again next time, and until next time, happy coding.